Starting out, my first book was called DreamStarter. Little did I know that that would be my Instagram handle, my company name. It was DreamStarter, the startup business guide. So that became my identity. And I realized how magical it was to have that moniker. So I realized my next book has to be about storytelling. Why don't I write a book called Attractive Story Selling? So over time, I became the attractive story selling guy. And then eventually I became the $1 million book guy. So it was all about the end goal 1 year from now.
Brando, hey, let me tell you the truth. It's not about who you know, but who knows you. Brando, it's your story. You can rewrite it if you so choose. It's your life. You decide those moves. Brando, you want to talk about getting the bag. He built a 7-figure brand from scratch. Brando, it's the Brand Up Podcast, but you already know. Enough talking, bro. Let's start this show. Brando.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Brand Up Podcast. Before we jump into the actual episode, if you're enjoying the topics and strategies that you're listening here on the show, I wanted to share with you that I just opened up a few applications for the Brand Up Accelerator program. So if you're looking to take your brand to the next level, or if you're struggling to separate your personal brand from your business, or maybe you're trying to integrate it in your business and get more exposure, or if you're simply just searching for effective ways to build an actual client acquisition system, this accelerator is perfect for authors, business owners, and coaches, and online entrepreneurs. So head over to www.brandupaccelerator.com to learn more and apply now. And now let's go back to the episode.
Brand Up.
Mike, my man. So first of all, thanks a lot for being at the show. We took a little bit of time on my end to get this done, but I appreciate you so much, man. I've learned so much. First of all, I met you about 2 years ago at an event, and obviously I knew about how much of an impact a book can have in somebody's life and business, but you just opened my eyes in a whole different way, man. So one quote that I've seen from you, I think this was recently, and I'm a big proponent, actually. I push a lot of my current customers to do short form content. And one of your quotes said, a book has a much bigger impact than a TikTok video. And that and that was like, damn, he's actually right. So I like that a lot, man. For people that are not aware of the book writing process, because in my opinion, I think the reason that your speech opened my eyes so much was your proprietary process of ghostwriting a book, right? Because I'm assuming everybody wants, or at least 99% of the business owners want to write a book. They probably know the impact, but they're just afraid. And like I'm one of the people that said, all right, 2 years ago I'm going to write a book, and then by the time that 2 years have passed, I realized, oh damn, I haven't wrote a book. So why don't you walk us a little bit through, first of all, how did you get started with your company, helping authors, helping business owners, entrepreneurs write books, and what's your main process? And then we'll go into more questions after.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is definitely something that we should have done a long time ago. We met almost 2 years ago at this point, and I'll never forget you and your wife treating me to dinner in Utah, Zionsville, Utah. I'll never forget that. So very appreciative. It's great to be here. And guys, I'm not against TikTok videos, just so you know. I'm not against them. I'm just saying there's a longer lasting influence when it comes from, you putting out a book as compared to short form content. Anybody can pull up their camera and create a video, but not everybody can create a book, put it out there, use it properly. And the way I look at it, it is a weapon. So I'm going to show people in this podcast a little bit about how easy it is to create a book, but the magic is on the back end. How you use the book, that's where the real power comes from. So to start off, I own a company called DreamStarters Publishing. We've helped over 300 entrepreneurs bring their stories to life in a book, and then we show them how to use it as a marketing tool. The way we do things is we break everything down into 15 generic lessons that you want to teach your audience. The first question I ask everybody is, hey, when the book is done in your hands, how do you envision using this book? Are you going to build a course? Are you going to get up on stage and talk about motivation? Are you going to try to create more of a brand awareness regarding one of your services? What are you trying to accomplish? As long as you have that vision in your mind as you're writing the book, this book is not about looking backwards. It's about looking forwards, using your story, all the lessons that you've learned to get you to the next ideal identity that you want associated with your name. It's about creating a new moniker. And Jim Rohn always says it's be of service to the many, for service to the many leads to greatness. When you write a book, all you have to do is figure out a way to serve the many. If you can serve enough people, maybe to get to where you're at in your life, eventually you'll get where you want to go also. And if you lead with value, if you lead with service, you're going to come off by being this educator. You're going to analyze where you come from, where you were, where you're at now, where you're going. And that's going to give you this clarity. And when you can have clarity in your life, I always say that's going to lead to freedom. Book equals clarity, clarity equals freedom. And if you can articulate your journey of what to do, what not to do to someone else, then it's going to make your life a lot easier going forward. The process is really simple. It's about a 75-day process, start to finish. 4-hour interview, 2 hours one day, 2 hours another day. We go over those 15 lessons. I ask you about the 15 lessons. Tell me the story that taught you that lesson. It could be the smallest thing. It could be something your grandfather taught you. It could be your first client that screwed you over out of money. It could be your first tenant that robbed you. Whatever it is, these crazy stories that happen in your life, break everything down and say, oh, that's where I learned that lesson. Oh, when I went to Tony Wadley's 365 Driven event in Utah, I remember Marian getting up on stage and talking about X, Y, and Z when it comes to funnels and automation. And that changed my life. So it could be the smallest story. And as long as I get that out in the interview, it's easy for my writer, which is when we take that content, we send it to a writer will sit down and write it for you. It's considered ghost writing. And have you ever read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, Marian?
Yeah, 100%.
So, of course, that's a book that's changed my life. It's changed many people's lives that I know of. When I interview people, they always bring up that book. And I'm like, well, who is that? Who wrote that book? And they're always going to say, what?
Robert Kiyosaki.
Yes, of course. Robert Kiyosaki's the genius. However, he's not the real writer of it. It's a woman named Sharon Lechter who spent the time breaking everything down and putting it down on paper. Robert Kiyosaki's stories and lessons. He's the brand, manager. He's the genius behind the Rich Dad Poor Dad philosophy. But Sharon Lechter's the genius when it comes to articulating it on a piece of paper. So that's what I wanted to bring to the average entrepreneur. And when our ghostwriter brings it to life in a 120-page book, at least 20 to 25,000 words, which is about a 2-hour read, now we send it to you, the author, the client, for you to fine tune it and really make it yours. This is where you put your own bread and butter inside of it and make it really feel like your words. Should come out pretty similar to how you speak and how you write at that first edit run through, but it's not going to be dead on until you go in and tweak it. And so we give you 2 edit run throughs. I help you out with title and subtitle. We give you cover designs. So day 30 after the interview, receive everything. Once you go through it all, you fine tune it. We clean it up, upload to Amazon. Amazon prints it for about $3 or $4 per copy. You give us the thumbs up once you're happy with it. We put you on the schedule and voila, you're an Amazon best-selling author. And you own the book 100%, start to finish. It's all yours. The real magic though, Marian, you probably get this because you are in the marketing world, is the funnels, the automation, the usage on the back end with courses and all the products and services. So if you're in real estate and you talk about real estate, maybe you want to be a coach. Maybe you want to create a tribe about, trying to get in other real estate investors. Maybe you want to try to raise funds. Maybe you want to give other people strategies and sales techniques and marketing techniques. Start thinking about that, because once the book is done, you create the funnels, the automation, then you get up on every podcast and say, if you really like what you hear, guys, go to my website, milliondollarbookpro.com, and check out everything. I'll give you the book for free. All you got to do is pay for shipping. And when you do that, you collect data, but more importantly, you're creating a buying relationship. You're not trying to get freebies, right? You're not trying to get people who are just looking to kick tires. You want to have a buying relationship established with them, because where you put your money is where you put your attention. Where you put your attention is where you get your results. So you're trying to find a tribe of people who are looking to give up a resource, whether it's a few dollars, to acquire something they don't have. And if you can help them with that few dollar investment, maybe you can help them with $100 investment and maybe $1,000 investment. So if you start thinking in those terms, now the book becomes a weapon, an asset for life, to help you create that moniker, that identity that you're seeking.
That's legit, man. I want to kind of dissect a little bit the process because you said something, well, you said a couple things that grabbed my attention. First, you said 15 chapters.
Yeah.
Now, you hear other people saying do between 7 and 9, do between 9 and 12. You say 15. Why should we shoot for the 15 instead of less or instead of more?
So we have found out through an interview process, you want more than you can possibly put in this book. Because when you do an interview, you are going to keep things flowing. 2 hours for you to speak about lessons and stories is actually pretty tough, right? So like for you to just keep shooting from the hip of different lessons and stories, we want to keep this flowing. The average person speaks for about 160, 170 words per minute. So if I could just keep you talking for 2 hours, that's a lot of words. Well, we're not trying to get your whole life, everything you've ever learned in your whole life out in these 4-hour interviews. We're trying to get the essentials. But some people don't even realize this when they write down lessons, that some of the lessons are very similar to each other. You'll say, lesson number 1, vision, beautiful. It's a great chapter. Lesson number 2, hey, to be successful, you got to see into the future. So they're so close that when you do the interview, a lot of the same lessons, same verbiage, same everything is coming out. And if you start going into the ghostwriting experience with not enough, now the ghostwriter is scrambling. When we do the interview, I want 15 because if I get 12, we are rocking. If I get you down to 11 or even 10, we're still okay. But you're looking at maybe 1,500 words to 2,000 words per chapter. When you start breaking everything down into this mathematical game, if I can keep you speaking, every minute's probably at least 150 to 170 words. So that's going to make it easy for my writer to listen to 15 minutes worth of a conversation and bring it to life professionally. We got the bare essentials. You're saying a few words to say over and over. I'm able to catch what's really important to you within those 15 minutes. Great. We have the core essence of the lesson and the core essence of the story. So more is better, but we still got to break it down in those 4-hour interviews. And the other part of it is if I start off by saying, just give me 7, it's going to make it very difficult. We're going to have to make this story and this lesson drawn out. I want this to be so easy for you to grasp a lesson. So when they read your chapter within 10 minutes, they know who you are, they know where you come from, they got something that they can apply to their own life, and therefore you are valuable to them. So short bursts with enough content make this book readable and memorable.
So going through these chapters, right? Let's assume somebody that wants to do it themselves, maybe they can afford, your services or somebody else at this point in time. How much of their story, because I guess this is one of the main things that come, as a question, how much of a story do I share? How much in my past do I go? Do you relate a different story to each chapter to make it relatable to the viewer? And how much do you actually go into it so you don't overshare, but you don't under, right?
Cool. These are good questions. Okay. So to start off, I always say the more vulnerable you can get, the better. The reason why is because nobody cares about you until you help them with their life, but nobody trusts you until they know your backstory. The more vulnerable you are, the more they trust you because, wow, they're saying this. They went through this. They went through a major divorce. Oh, that person screwed them over. Wow. Everything is not hunky-dory and perfect in this person's life. And they're not trying to pretend it is. They just overcame these crazy moments. So if you have crazy moments in your past, use them. So I would get as vulnerable as you can be comfortable in sharing up on stage or on a podcast. The last thing you want to do is write about something and never want to talk about it. So you have to be comfortable with it to a certain degree. It's going to become easier and easier the more you talk about it. But there are people who struggle talking about certain things in their background. Just before this call, I got off a call with a guy he owns a sex toy shop. So he said to me the exact same question. He asked me, hey, there's a lot in my past that I don't know if I'm comfortable in sharing with you because I have this industry, I have this company, I also own restaurants. How much do I share? And I said, listen, you have so much content. I guarantee it's going to come out eventually on stage or in a podcast. So whatever you're going to say to someone, if they stop you on the side of the road right there, that essential story and that essential lesson, without thinking too much, what comes naturally for you? And if there is something that you say, I'm just not ready, I can't share this, don't put it in the book. But if you know that this listener or this reader could benefit from it, then it is in your best interest to share it. So you have to be comfortable, but you have to think about, I need to be vulnerable so I can capture attention. I need to put stuff out there that other people are just unwilling. There's a great movie called Fight Club. Have you ever seen it, Marian?
Yeah, Brad Pitt, yeah.
So it's basically the psychology of this clinical psychologist named Carl Jung. He talks about the shadow, and men are basically being like, softened up in society. And so individuals out there who are free, like Tyler Durden, are the ones who've overcome adversity, who have faced their shadow and won, the dark moments, the dark energy. So the reason why we look up to Tyler Durden, or they do in the movie, is because he's totally free. He's free in every way the other men are not. So you, as the reader, or you as the author, have to analyze that if you are scared to say certain things, then you are not being the example of a free man or a free woman. So the more you put yourself out there and you show that you're not afraid of certain parts of your life, shit, man, that's going to capture attention. That's going to show that you are free and they are not. And therefore, they're going to look at you as an example, as a model to say, whatever that person's doing, I want to do, because number one, they went through some serious shit that connects with me, that common ground. But number two, they are the example of someone who just does not care what other people think of them. And that's what makes you successful. So I want a piece of that.
Gotcha. And you said something, I'm going to be a little selfish in here. You said that you were on a call with a possible customer of yours, and he said, hey, I'm in this industry, but I'm also in this industry, and maybe in others. What do you say to a person, like I'm in the same situation, right? Like I'm in the personal branding space with my customers online, but I'm also involved in a lot of different industries offline, everything from, real estate investments to restaurants to home service industry. How do you pick? I guess I probably know the answer. You pick a topic that you want to be known for, right? In terms of what the book is about.
Yes, that I get to meet a lot of serial entrepreneurs. Some are in real estate, some are in pet insurance companies, some are in everything, some are in software and development and coaching. One individual taught me this lesson. His name is Mark Evans DM. He was the real estate guy, made millions and millions and millions in real estate. There was a day that happened in his life that he said, I don't want to be the real estate guy anymore. It's just too small. I want to become the magician when it comes to business. So he could be in every different business. So you don't want to be known as just a real estate guy. Maybe you want to be the guy who's everywhere. He wanted to become the magician, not the mule. So we wrote a book called Magician versus Mule. So it's about how to create ultimate wealth and success and basically, freedom. So he redefined himself as the magician, and he spilled in stories of all the businesses that he was associated with. So whether it was real estate or, emails or marketing companies, people are drawn to that. Hey, you're in everything? Wow, I would love to be able to figure out how to do all of it. So if you want to become known as the real estate guru, maybe that's your step one, because this was like his 9th book at this point. So maybe he was at a point in his career where he's like, listen, I've done it all. I've been the real estate guy. I wrote a book on it. Now it's time for me to elevate myself to the magician. He realized that the next step in his life was to become the universal entrepreneur. And maybe that's not yours, but a year from now, if someone were to say, hey, Marian is this type of person, he does this and he does this, what are those words associated with your name that you dream of? Like, man, I would love for someone to call me the book guy, the podcast guy. Starting out, my first book was called DreamStarter. Little did I know that that would be my Instagram handle, my company name. It was DreamStarter, the startup business guide. So that became my identity. And I realized how magical it was to have that moniker. So I realized my next book has to be about storytelling. Why don't I write a book called Attractive Story Selling? So over time, I became the attractive story selling guy. And then eventually I became the $1 million book guy. So it was all about the end goal 1 year from now. And if you are the real estate guy, but don't want to be anymore, Or if you are the software guy but don't want to be anymore, now's the time to redefine yourself, recreate yourself into that next version. And therefore, a year from now, all your hashtags, all your posts, all your videos will be associated with that phrase.
That makes a lot of sense. I remember when I think I talked to you a few weeks ago about me wanting to write a book, even 2 years ago when I initially met you. And then I said to you, but I went through all of these other things in the last 2 years that my book would not be the same now as it was if I would have wrote it, 2 years ago. And you said something that kind of caught my attention. And you said, you're right. That's why we strive to finish the book in 75 days. Because what happens next might change your opinion or might change your goals, and that's fine, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all business owners, we're all people. Goals do change in a couple of years from now, maybe in a couple of months. So that really kind of grabbed my attention. So for someone that's debating now and thinking, all right, I do want to write a book. I do want to get it out there. Can you lay down a process for someone that they can do it themselves?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to find, a ghost writer that understands your voice and writes the book. Like, I remember a customer of mine about 2 or 3 years ago, she wrote a book with a ghostwriter that was the freelancer at the time. But the main thing that she mentioned was, I don't feel like it's my voice. Like, the book is great and it's, obviously great grammar and all that, but I don't feel like the reader understands as it is my voice on these pages. So how do you, if somebody wants to do it themselves, how are they able to kind of emphasize that voice into the written word?
Great question. So there's a book out there called Who Not How. If you are struggling with the aspects of maybe outsourcing, you have to read this book. In order to scale, you need to let go of certain parts of your business that are non-revenue producing, and writing is a non-revenue producing activity. The marketing and the strategy in the back end is revenue producing. That's where you put your attention. But I want to start off with answering that first little question that you brought up about the time frame. You said about the 75 days, just to kind of hammer that home. We as entrepreneurs, anybody listening to this podcast right now, I'm assuming that you're an entrepreneur, you're hungry, you're driven. You're probably reading a lot of books. You're probably going to events. You're watching a lot of videos. Your goal should be to basically shed skin and maybe kill off the older version of yourself who you were yesterday or the day or a few weeks ago or a few years ago, to become a better version of yourself today as compared to yesterday or even tomorrow or next week, next month. We are growing at such a fast rate with all this input, with Instagram and all these different social media channels coming at us, with TikTok and all these. You are now consuming content faster than anybody ever in this world, which means you're growing and you're changing faster than ever. And so if you spend a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever writing a book, you are going to change so much in that time frame that if you start it in 1 year and finish it 2 years later, you're a different person. And by the way,
So
you
true.
should be,
Yeah.
which means you could just lean back and say, thank God I didn't do that book because I'm a different person. Well, a book is a trophy. It's an asset. If you can create digital assets or just assets in general, you can always say, I have that accomplished. Go here, because that's a part in your life. That's a chapter in your life. 5 years from now, if you're a billionaire, but you're only a millionaire now, the lessons in this book to become a millionaire will serve someone way more than what you learn as a billionaire, because what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are doing right now is really not applicable to someone who's trying to just pay their rent. It's too far beyond their scope. So getting things done in a very short amount of time matter, whether that's creating videos or even a book. That's why we shoot for a 90-day window at max. 75 is the average. But if you can get it done, get it out there, the way you do that is through an outsourcing program. It's the only way we figured this out. So Who Not How, major book that you should read. And it breaks down the most successful entrepreneurs out there are outsourcing what they're not good at. So if you're out there and you're saying, man, I don't have the money to hire a ghostwriter. I didn't hire a ghostwriter for my first book. It became a little bit trickier of a process. I was able to get it done, but I just didn't have it done in a way that it's for someone else. Like if there's a business that you can hire to just get covers done, do the bestseller, you can have all this mental capacity, mental energy focused on other things of your business. So if you are out there and you want to do it yourself, here's my philosophy. You just reverse engineer the philosophy, the strategy that I just told you earlier on in this podcast. Instead of having an interviewer like me ask you questions, why don't you start writing down questions that you would love to answer? Or what are the questions that people are asking you right now? Write down those questions in its totality on a document. Then record yourself speaking by saying, okay, question number 1, how would I start a business from nothing? And if your answer is simple, succinct, tied with a lesson and a story, then you could say, the way I would start a business is this, this, and this. And the way I learned this is this, this, and this. Get your voice recorded so it's somewhere, so you have it. Then send it to a transcription service. There are many out there. I haven't used one in a long time, but there are many out there. Some are free, some are actually very costly, but it's all based off of what you're looking for. Just get your words down on a piece of paper or a Word document. A transcription service will do that. Now you have an outline. Jordan Peterson, one of the guys that I follow very closely, if you're a big Jordan Peterson fan, he says, in order to be successful in life, you need to figure out how to create a bad first draft, whether that's playing guitar or learning to dance or writing a book. Get a bad first draft so now you can adjust. Even when you start a business, you're creating a bad first draft. Nobody's doing everything the right way. But as long as you have some type of outline, now you can fix what's broken. You need to see what's broken before you can fix it. And by having your words put on a screen, now you can tweak it and get it to your liking. I don't think that anybody is ever truly happy with their first draft because you can always fine tune. And even going back to my recent book, which was put out in June of this year, or was it May or June? I know that I can go back in there and tweak it and say, oh, there's a great little phrase I just learned. Let me put it back in there. That's the wrong mentality, because you should save all this other stuff that you're going to learn from this book to put it in the next one. So once you have it put down on a piece of paper in a Word document, you fine tune it. You can go to Fiverr, get a cover designed very easily, very inexpensively. And it might not be exactly what you want. This is all about getting you to the next level, getting you a little bit more clarity tomorrow than you have today. And so the more clarity you have, the market's going to see that. They are going to respond. They want to follow you into battle if you are clear, and they're going to want to do business with you. So by having a book, just getting it done, even if it's not 100% perfect, by doing it yourself. The girl that I was dating at the time for my first book was an editor. Lucky me. She edited the book for me. She put it together, and there are still issues with the book, but it was close enough. Done is better than perfect. And it was my first book. I was a nobody on social media. I couldn't get a speaking gig for the life of me. But the moment that book came out, even if they didn't read the book, I'm telling you, people followed me online. They gave me speaking gig opportunities. I had a little bit more confidence. I walked a little taller, my shoulders back. I spoke in a different tone. I became a different person. I began to change. So getting it done, even if it's not perfect, even if the tonality is a little off, you know, the way you speak and the way you write might be a little bit different. When you go to a ghostwriter's job is obviously to nail your tonality. But what some people are trying to really get to is, hey man, get me to sound a little smarter than I really am. You know, so when the ghostwriter's watching the interview, we're going to bring it to life in a similar fashion to how you speak, unless we have other writing to kind of judge our writing off of, so that you've already put out there. So when we put things together, our goal is to get tonality. 2 edit run-throughs usually clean that up easily. So you can go through and say, hey, I don't speak in these terms. I don't use contractions. By the way, we've had clients that say, I don't speak in contractions. I've never heard that before writing books for people, but contractions like don't, can't, wouldn't, shouldn't. So they didn't want any of that in their book. So it's amazing. Tonality is different from person to person. It's usually fixed within 2 edit run-throughs. Hardest part about it, regardless, when you put a book together, there are some parts of it that you're just not going to be 100%, okay with. You're not going to be like, that's perfect, because you could always fine tune and say it over and over in a different way. So I would say get it done so you can become that next version of yourself. And then your goal, I believe, of writing your first book is to get you to the second one. And then you get you to the third one. It's almost like doing a podcast. As you do it, you become a little bit more natural. This is like myelination in your brain. When you practice something over and over and over, the synapses get really strong, which means now your mental energy that was required to actually perform that task starts to diminish, and that mental energy can be focused elsewhere. So the more podcasts you do, the more videos you create, the more you write, the more books you put out there, things become easier. The major takeaway from writing books, I've realized too, more than just one, is now that the market has more to judge of you, right? If you just have a book and that's it, the market can only judge that one book. But what if you have 1,000 podcast episodes and you've done, hundreds of deals, and you have real estate, and you have rental property, and then you have restaurants, and you have podcasts over here, and now the market can judge you off of all of that, and so they can see the full body of work. And that's why momentum and getting things done are going to serve you in time, because one book leads to 2 books, leads to 3 books. Now the market says, man, you have all this social evidence out there, this social proof. You must know what you're talking about because you're committed to at least writing a book, and maybe more books.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you also said something, because I had 2 other questions that I wanted to ask you, but you said something that makes me add this one in. So the way you plan your first book is to always have in the back of your mind, hey, can I write a second, not a second version, but a second part, or like a 2.0 version or 3.0, or you never necessarily plan for that from the beginning? You just let that, okay.
No, the reason why is because this book should be just a snapshot of where you're going right now. When you get to that part, that next stage, you might be a little bit different. This is all about setting up chess moves. The last thing you want to do is say, man, I want to create a 5-volume series regarding X, Y, and Z. Man, life is happening really fast. Just have that first glimpse in your brain of who you want to become a year from now, how you want to make most of your money, and get there. Once you're there, start thinking about the next shot. You might have overshot something. You might have missed. Doesn't matter. You are moving in the right direction. And now you can look back and say, man, you know what? I'm supposed to go over there. My strengths, because now every day that you put content out there, I believe you get to know yourself a little bit more. And the more you know yourself, the more dangerous you are. You want to become dangerous in this world? Learn to read, write, become articulate your message, be of service to people. Over time, you're going to figure out yourself a little bit more than you ever thought was actually possible. And if you know yourself more than the next person, people are going to recognize that. So your goal is to just get to the next part of your career and then shoot somewhere else. Shoot to maybe a little bit more accurate. Maybe you want to be the sales guy. Maybe you really want to become the real estate individual. As you know yourself, you'll know what to write about. So don't think about that early on, because life's happening really fast. You got to pivot and adjust and fine tune your craft as it comes to you.
Love it, man. And I might steal this from you, but you said the more you know, the more dangerous you become, or the more you do, the more dangerous you become. So that I like that. All right, man. So what I always like to ask my guests, for the people listening, I like them to be able to follow 2 simple paths. One, a short-term goal, meaning what could they do right at the end of this interview? Like they put their iPhone, or maybe they're still listening, to another episode, but let's assume they want to take action right after this episode. What is something that they can do in their book writing process? And then the next one would be what they can do in the next 3 to 6 months to maybe someone, started to write their book 2 years ago, like myself. So if we can share those 2 things, I think that's a great way for people to kind of follow a step that they can do right now, and then a step in the next 3 to 6 months.
Step 1, right now, write down a moniker that you want associated with your name right now. And maybe you really want it a year from now, but what is something that you want associated with your name? Write that down. Then jot down 15 lessons that you would want to teach your audience. It could be as simple as create good habits. It could be as simple as, put yourself in the right rooms, join masterminds. You know these answers. It's really easy for you to kind of break down, what are you not doing? What could you do right now that could make your life successful? And if you could just sit there and analyze, what would you love to teach someone right now so they can elevate their career? Write that down. And then put a dash and say, yes or no, do I have a specific story tied to that? That right there, moniker tied to a lesson with a story. The last piece is, who would you like to help? Write down the target audience. Who is the direct avatar, the perfect reader for this book or this perfect client that you want to work with? I always say to people, there are 3 things I need for every chapter when I interview you. I need a general lesson, I need a specific story, and I need a specific audience member. So if I can have those 3 things, I know what I'm going to ask you. I already know if I'm going to put myself, if you're trying to reach 25-year-old women who are looking to start businesses, I kind of know, all right, as a woman, what are they struggling with? What are they running into? Are they running into more peer pressure than men? Why haven't they started more businesses? What is going on there? Is there a statistic or a fact regarding this that you've come across? So I could ask questions based off the target audience. So if you could jot those things down, that's going to change your life. And the second question is, what could they do a year from now? Is that what
3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months.
Not even a year. Yeah, even shorter than that.
3 to 6 months, I would say, in order for you, because here's the other part of it, and I think we got to get into this for people to understand, the imposter syndrome. The reason why a lot of people don't want to write a book is because they feel like they haven't made it yet. They feel like they're imposters. Who am I to write a book? I mean, I'm not a billionaire yet. Well, my first question is, have you done anything in your life that you're proud of, that you think that you can help someone else accomplish also? And they're always like, yeah. I'm like, well, then why aren't you sharing it? Well, I am on Instagram. Well, if you're doing it on Instagram, why wouldn't you put it in a book? Jeff Bezos, self-publishing and all this has changed the game. You can now write a book very easily. There are no gatekeepers. You are the controller of your destiny. So 3 to 6 months from now, it's your job now. If you want to write a book and you're starting to put it together and you're going to write it yourself and you're going to take these steps that I just gave you and apply them, well, 3 to 6 months from now, you don't want to feel like an imposter. This is your chance to level up. In order for you to level up, feed your mind with the great content out there. Listen to some Jim Rohn, the Jordan Petersons, stoicism. It's your chance now to master your craft within 3 to 6 months. You could put hours and hours and hours in. Your fear might be that you will feel like an imposter. Well, now's your chance to kind of feed your mind with the right stuff so you don't feel like an imposter. Put out good content. Learn what you don't know right now. So whenever it comes to that point of publishing that book, you feel like you belong. And there are 2 things that I talk about in my book. And Jordan Peterson brings this up in his lectures, but humans are very similar to rats. And rats are, their motivation and fears and all that are very in tune with how the human brain works. So if I were to ask you, Marian, do you think humans are driven more by like want or fears? What would you say?
By want or fears?
Yeah. So are we driven by what we want more or what we are afraid of?
I mean, if I would answer, it would be somewhere in the middle, because you want something and you're doing it because you're afraid you're going to miss out.
Good answer. I think you're different than most, but the very core of who we are, we're fear driven. So that's why like the news and all. So most people are fear driven, but as entrepreneurs, you're right. You're dead on. So in this study, it talks about how rats were put in this maze, starving rats that were about to die, but they needed food. Okay. And they needed food right away. So they put cheese at the very end of the maze. And so they put the rats at the very beginning of the maze and they said, okay, let's time the rat from the beginning to the end. How long does it take them to get to the cheese? Because they're about to die. They need to eat and they are starving. They're going to go after it with everything they have to eat that food. They timed it. Then they did another experiment and they said, you know what? Now let's put the scent of a cat behind them. Let's see what happens whenever they're starving. There's food in front of them. And there's a cat, the smell of cat. If you don't know, rats are deathly afraid of cats without even ever seeing them in their life. So there's like, it's instinct. So they put the scent of a cat behind them. What they found out is rats will fly through that maze to get the cheese and to run away from the cat, which means that if you could combine, just like you said, your wants with your fears, If you could say, man, I would love to be the guru when it comes to motivation or business development. Great. Well, now analyze what scares you. What is keeping you up at night? Man, I don't want to be stuck in this spot a year from now. Great. Use that. Man, I don't want to feel like the imposter. Great. Use that. Man, I don't want to be in, struggling with money this time next year. Great. Use it to your advantage. Analyze those fears so it pushes you through your own maze. So it gets that book done. So it forces you to go to the mastermind. So it forces you to get on stage or talk on podcasts. So now you can use your fears with your wants and become the ideal version of yourself. And 3 to 6 months from now, you can make leaps and jump to different levels like you could never have imagined 4 or 5 years ago. You could become a different person in 6 months. I've seen people make millions of dollars through different programs within a year. All right. Just imagine what you can do in 6 months. And if you could become a little bit further down the road than you are today, 6 months from now, would you trade places with that person? Of course. So do what's necessary now. Combine your wants with your fears.
Love it, man. And I love the way that you kind of broke down these steps for people to be easy to implement. All right, man. So as we getting closer to wrap things up, where can people get your book?
Yeah, so you can go on Amazon. I don't recommend you go to Amazon because then you're going against my system, but you can buy it on Amazon for, I think, $15, or you can go to milliondollarbookpro.com. If you're interested in my philosophy, my program, or anything, I recommend you go there just so you understand how it all flows. So milliondollarbookpro.com, that's how you get the book. It's how to publish a book and generate wealth without even selling it. And therefore you can see everything. And it's pretty cool because that's exactly what we could do for you. And if you're able to see the system without, looking up YouTube channels and just see it yourself, I think it might open your eyes to what's possible for you. The company, with all the data and everything that I've built since 2016, with all of our testimonials, is DreamStarters Publishing. So if you want to get a sense of who I am, look at those two websites, or just follow me on Instagram at Million Dollar Book Pro, or the one that's very political and I get shadow banned like crazy is The Dream Starter.
All right, man. And of course, we'll make sure to list all the links in the description and show notes of this episode. And what kind of gets me really pumped up now, I want to do a second version of this interview, because we only covered one part of this whole process. It's just the book writing thing, right?
Yeah.
Like now is, of course, a lot of people will ask, and they're probably wondering, all right, Mike talked about how can you write your book and create and generate wealth without even selling it. So what's that? And then we'll get to that into a different episode. But do you feel we missed anything out of this process specifically? Only the book writing and the, kind of figuring out what's your story, how do you come up with something to write about and all that?
I think we covered everything. To do it yourself, what I would do, and this is what I did in my first book, is a lot of people have to figure out maybe this time to write. You got to break away from the world to write. I used to wake up at right around 5:30 every morning and write. This is whenever the world was at its most quiet for me. So if you need to figure out a time for you to get, clear with your thoughts, analyze a part of your day. I always say you got to, and this is a Jordan Peterson quote also, I love listening to him. He's changed my life. But you got to build the day that you want. Don't just go into the day and react. Start scheduling the day out that you dream of. Waking up early, starting to write. You get to have that checkbox. You check it off, get it done. So if you need that time to sit down and write, figure out a schedule, because what gets scheduled gets done. And whether it's 10 o'clock at night or midnight, start putting on the schedule so it becomes a priority. You look at it every day and you'll start to feel like shit if it doesn't get done. So that's what I recommend. When it comes to this courses and all the other stuff, maybe that is a whole other podcast, because I'm telling you guys, once you're able to see pipelines and opportunities and text messages and voicemail drops and emails going out without you even being involved, you're going to say, holy shit, I have a real business. I have a real system. I'm serving the many in a way that the big names are doing. So yeah, we could talk about that in different podcasts going forward.
Love it, man. Thanks a lot again.
Thanks, man.
Brand up.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Brand Up Podcast. I hope you found this episode helpful, and hopefully you'll implement it, because knowledge without action means nothing, as we all know, right? Now, if you're inspired to build an unstoppable brand that conquers sales and implement a predictable client acquisition system, my Brand Up Accelerator program is here to help you do just that. So what we do inside the Accelerator, it's a 9-step process. So first step is, of course, we have to do an assessment and understand exactly where your brand is at. Do you need help with implementing it within your business, or you need help with separating your personal brand from your business? I think that's really important. Step number 2 is we do a little bit of goal setting, because we have to understand where we are, but then we need to know where we're going to go. Step 3 is we do a brand development strategy. Number 4 is the client acquisition plan itself, because we need to know how we're going to acquire customers, what is the offer looking like, things like that. Step number 5 is the content creation and also the platforms that you need to focus. Some people need to focus just on one, some people need to focus on multiple, depending how big the team is, depending, how many resources they have. Number 6 is collaborations and possible podcast connections. Number 7 is the sales process. Number 8 is paid ads, because up until point 7, we pretty much build the fire, and the paid ads, in my opinion, is literally the gasoline that you pour on top of it. And number 9, we implement and refine, because we need to understand what works and do more of that. So if you're ready to take your personal brand and business to the new heights, head over to brandupaccelerator.com to learn more and apply now. Thanks again for listening, guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Brand up.